Hello and welcome to the Decking Awesome podcast. My name is Owen and I'm joined by the awesome Ciara and Brian.
Hello.
Today we are breaking down our favourite social board games. These are games that test players on our social skills. We are looking for games where bluffing or deception plays a part, or where kind of communication is limited in some way. So let's dive in. First up is number 5. Brian, what's yours?
Okay, my first one, or my fifth one, I suppose, is a game called Don't Get Got. I don't know how popular this is as a game, but it's such an amazingly fun game. Everyone gets this little book of 6 little challenges they have to try and complete throughout the night. It's great for a party that, it's not necessarily a game themed party, but you can run it in the background. They've all got these little booklet of challenges, like it might be convince another player to finish their drink, or drop something in someone's pocket and have them give it back to you, or get them to correct your spelling or your pronunciation or something. They're all weird little challenges, but at the start, you're going around and you're like, you have to drop something and get someone to pick it up for you, and you're just like throwing your keys behind someone and then they're picking them up for you and you're like, yes, I got you. And then then you flip it over and you've got a tick and you've completed your challenge. And for the first, maybe 10 minutes, half an hour of the game, everyone knocks off a few little challenges for themselves, but then everyone gets so suspicious of everything. It is so much fun because someone will be like, oh, hey, do you know what time it is? And it's like, yeah, but I'm not telling you. Nor am I checking my watch or my phone. This one's on you. You want to know what time it is? That's between you and God. It's so much fun because at the start, no one's really thinking about it, and then people are celebrating their little victories. And then after a while, people are trying to engage with each other, but not engage with each other, and it kind of forces you to try and find people who are maybe less suspicious of you, and it moves you around and keeps you talking and chatting and engaging with everyone. I think it's really fun in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I love the fact that it's such a low stakes game to get into as well. Not many people need to know the rules. As you play, you realize the rules are all about kind of social deception and kind of what the framework is between your group. It's just a great game to get a whole bunch of people playing a board game. And, even if you're not part of the group, you still know what's happening. You still know people are playing this game and people are doing weird stuff. So great idea.
And I always forget because I have no attention span whatsoever. So I find it really interesting after 2 hours where I've forgotten and everyone's still acting really strange.
I think it's a great casual game because people can join in at any point if they're late to the party, but it's also like if you're not in the mood for playing games that you don't have to play, and it's not like, well, if someone drops out of the game is ruined, because everyone has their own little pack of challenges. If you don't want to play, you just don't play. People can still try and get you, but there's no impact on your life. There's no impact on the party. It's you can play or you can not play. It's really fun, and you're not really limited by numbers as well. So I think it's very good for a background kind of game running at a party.
Yeah, and unlike a lot of other games we're going to be talking about in this podcast, communication here is there's a lot of it. Obviously you can't talk about the game or what you're planning to do, but the whole point of it is you're trying to talk to people, get conversations going to try and get it into the right scenario where you're going to try and get got. That's it. So yeah, great idea with massive communication that you can do alongside other things.
Yeah, and people don't feel excluded. Like being asked the time doesn't hinder you in any way if you aren't playing the game.
Yeah.
Ciara, what's your number 5?
Mine is Saboteur. A game we've only played on Board Game Arena, as I've only learned to play during the pandemic. It's an interesting game. You play as dwarven miners, and it might just be miners. There's a picture of a dwarf on the box. I don't know that it says you're a dwarf actually anywhere. And you're mining and you're trying to get gold. And there's a saboteur and they don't want you to get back. So you're mining like a tunnel, and then you have to get a tunnel from the start to the end and get the gold. And saboteurs are there to try and stop you getting back to the end. So I think this is a good game. I think it's interesting to try and work together or work against each other and not know who's on your team and who's not on your team. I think there's probably a limit in how powerful the saboteur possibly could be, but it's a fun game and it's nice and lighthearted.
I think it's a game that probably suits more people because when you've got more people, you've probably got more saboteurs, and it's harder to figure out who's who. But we played it with just 4 people, and it was very obvious almost immediately who the saboteur was each time. So I think and because we're kind of pitching social games, I think it's ideal for that. It's ideal for, a big number of people. And when you've got a lot of people around, and it's a great way to get involved. And one of those, oh, it's you, it's definitely you. No, it's not me, it's definitely them. And one of those kind of games.
And you can blame the cards. If in doubt,
Yeah.
say I didn't have the cards to build the tunnel the right direction. You've got a few things you can explain, but it's good to get to accuse people randomly of being a saboteur, and they can at least have an option to defend themselves and saying, "Oh, I was trying to help. Oh, I thought that would be a good way for the tunnel to go." I feel it has the advantage on some of the like Resistance and games like that, in that you're trying to do something as well. So it's not just even though I really enjoy a lot of those types of games, it's not just you're elected to be an enemy and you have to root them out. There's also an element of you have to build the tunnel. So you're doing something at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because Saboteur is probably unlike a lot of other party games that are out there. Party games usually just a lot of people and they're doing something random to try and see who it's all about deception and bluffing and stuff like that. Whereas this is actually a card game in its own right with deception and bluffing in it. Kind of like Dead of Winter slightly, except for it's a card game, so it's a lot lower stakes. It's much easier to play. But if you have a load of people over and they're not big into like Don't Get Got or something like that, where there's like a party atmosphere involved, but you want to actually play a board game or a card game, Saboteur is a good idea, because you can take it out, everyone can play, and you're actually playing something rather than like not playing. Like Don't Get Got is like you're not really playing.
Like it's a kind of
something else.
It's a party setting. It's you're sitting around the house rather than sitting down at a table kind of game.
Like a barbecue or something like that, or something.
You're chatting, you're walking in and out of rooms.
Yeah, so I love that about Saboteur. My number 5 is Hanabi, which is probably the opposite of Don't Get Got in communication, because there's no communication at all, really. You can't talk to anybody else. But the idea of Hanabi, the theme of it is you are trying to get the best fireworks. That's about like laying out cards in numbered order. So whoever gets those cards wins, and there's a couple of different sets, and you have to somehow convince people of like when to play their cards so that you can play. If you have a 7, you're waiting for someone else to play the right card so that you can play your 7. Because if you play it too late, then you can't play your card and the fireworks will be slightly bad. And so it's a really good kind of game for a small amount of people to play, where they can learn more about communication, not deception, not bluffing. Everyone's literally trying to work together to try and get the best fireworks. There's no traitor or anything like that.
Hanabi, for anyone who hasn't played it, has a beautifully unique mechanic where everyone else sees your cards, but you don't see your cards. So you're trying to decide the best card to play, and you haven't got a clue what's in your hand. Every now and again, you can give each other clues and stuff like that as to what people are holding. But like, if you don't know what you're holding or no one's giving you a clue, your choice is to either try and help someone else, or you have to just start playing your cards, and that can just be chaos. Like, people are going, well, I hope he gives a clue rather than, just plays down, well, he played one of his cards. Oh, no. Damn it.
You're on a really good streak. So you're all like really coordinated and have a really great plan. But then because you've spent so much time on that plan, you've completely forgotten to tell one person, anything at all.
Yeah, you have the critical card that we need you to play right now, and they're just not aware of it.
Yeah, that is tricky, because everyone has to have a go. They have to do something with their go, and there's only a certain amount of clues you can have. So that is very cool. And people communicate to say, like, I'm in trouble. You can see it in their face almost immediately. Like, I don't know what's going on right now.
I feel like Hanabi contributes to the social element a lot more kind of after the game. And it's a nice quick game, so you'll play around fairly quickly. But like, it's great for, a group who might not know each other that well. Throughout it, you can't really talk an excessive amount, but afterwards, there's a huge amount of talking where you're like, I just needed you to play that one card, and I was trying to tell you, I was trying to just give you the eyes, I was trying to, suggest, but you just weren't getting it, and you were, then I tried to give you a clue, and you completely misunderstood me, and then there's a whole dissection section afterwards.
Yeah, I love that. And it is perfect for new players who've never played Hanabi before. That's probably where it shines the greatest, is your first few games with Hanabi. After a while, obviously, with certain groups, you can come up with tactics, you can come up with strategies to make it better, give yourself a better chance of playing. It becomes a little bit scripted for my liking at that point, but this is definitely my top 5 in the fact that brand new people who are looking for a great social game, pick up Hanabi. You will definitely enjoy it. Yeah. Number 4.
I've gone for Codenames with this one. I actually think this should be higher up on my list, because Codenames is such a fun game. I've put it down a bit lower because I'm really bad at it. Codenames is a game where you've got 16 cards out in front of you, and you're split into 2 teams. The teams can be as big or as little as they like, and you're basically trying to tell the person, so the person who's giving the clues knows where all the spies and all the secret cards and all the cards you don't want players to guess are. And then you're trying to give clues to get people to flip over the correct cards. So like you might be trying to, like the cards you might be going for are like banana, apple, orange, that kind of thing. And so you might give the clue, fruit 3. So you're hoping the people will go, banana, orange, apple, perfect. So you flipped over those 3. But it's a game where, especially when you've got more people playing on it, where overthinking starts to really come into effect. When people are like, fruit for 3. Okay, well, banana, definitely, that's a fruit. Oh, well, hold on. Banana's not really a fruit. Banana, it's because the seeds are on the inside. Is that it? It makes it not a fruit. It makes it technically a berry or something. So he's definitely not talking about banana here. Yeah. And then, and you're sitting there going, oh my God, how are you not picking banana? What is wrong with you?
And you just have to, as the person giving the guess, you just have to sit there and not say anything as these people just overanalyze something and we're like, oh, this is a mess.
And the talking, the dissection and everything in it is just so beautiful, because some people will get it straight away. Like they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Like you might go circle for 2 and there's ball and there's
disc.
Thank you. Couldn't think of a single other circular thing. The moment I said it, I knew I was in trouble. But like you think it's really obvious, someone will go, oh, it's definitely that one and that one, and you flip them over and you're like, great, okay, perfect. But then like where people are chatting about it, or where you give something really obscure where you're like envy, and none of the cards are even vaguely close to envy, but you're just watching someone try to dissect what you could possibly mean by it. You're like, well, does he mean apple? Apple is green is envy. That's probably what he's going for. And you're sitting there going, no, not even close.
And it's great. It's a great game if you're losing as well, because you can have these Hail Mary shots.
Oh yeah,
of just guessing like Game of Thrones, and then hoping someone guesses like field and castle and deer and wolf, and they're just like, and they're flipping it over and they're getting them all right, and it's a great feeling. There is the opposite side of it, which is like you can say something like fruit, and they can flip over apple and banana, and then you didn't realize, but there was another fruit on that board, and it's the assassin. You flip it over and you lose. There's a lot of information going on, and also you're trying to have a lot of guesses in your head what to say. And so there's kind of weird scenarios where everyone's just very silent, waiting for this person to say something, because you can only say one word and then you got to be silent for another 5 minutes. So yeah, I like it,
and it's good workout for your brain. Like you have to find patterns in 5 random words and come up with something to link them together that somebody else in the room is going to get.
And just watching how other people, make connections with words, you're going, this person's a psychopath.
Yeah, and you can't really get better at the game as well. It's just about, you can do inside jokes if you are a well-knit group, but also if they're completely random people, you can still do things that will, like you can say like Donald Trump, and then you might get a few things, So there's things that like global ideas and everything will still work here in code names. Kira?
So I went for Coup as my number 4 game, a classic. I think there's a lot to be said for Coup. It's very easy. I find it quite easy to play those 2-card games. I think having a limited amount of things in front of you, the rule set is really short. So you play as, I guess, nobody and are given 2 personalities. And the personalities might be like you're an assassin or you're the Duke and you have to collect tax. So your actions are really like something to do with money or something to do with other players or something to do with switching your personalities. And there's like every action has an opposite action. So if somebody can take tax, somebody can stop you taking tax. And you have to pretend or be one of those personalities, and no one can see who you are. So you might want to assassinate somebody and you pretend you're an assassin and you try and kill them. And then they can say, I don't believe that you're an assassin, or they just have to accept that you're an assassin because it takes 2 assassination attempts to kill a person. And yeah, you just want to try and win, but there's a lot of chat. I think there's a lot of there's some people choose kind of traditional things that they always try. Other people always choose a random action, and then it's to try and overanalyze their facial tics and their body movement and all that sort of stuff to try and guess whether they're lying or not lying. Sometimes some people's strategy is in every game, their first 2 rounds are the exact same action, and it's very hard.
This guy. Yeah. Yeah, no, I've definitely got the Duke. Yeah, I'm just going to take 3 coins. Yeah.
Every game.
Every time. And because I do it every time, you never know when I'm lying.
Well, that's the thing. That's why you got to engage you in conversation early to see how much of it, how lying you are. But
in the case of the Duke taking taxes, anybody can call your bluff.
Yeah.
So in kind of smaller player counts, there is a lot more waiting and analyzing and trying to figure out what's going to happen and trying to get there in the end game and surviving. Whereas with like more players, it tends to be just random accusations a lot more, because you can accuse someone and still have one health left and then just be quiet for the rest of the game if it didn't work out,
I there's three of each kind of card in the deck, and I like when it goes around and 5 people are claiming to be the same person, and you're like, oh, I have 2 of them, so I know at least 4 of you are lying.
Yeah, and like there's expansions with more rules, but I probably like the most the very simple first one, because you can keep track in your head of how many cards have gone out. And you also know that like people are likely to pretend that they have the ambassador and switch out their cards if they have Contessa, because no one likes Contessa.
Blocks you from getting assassinated, but no one keeps her except for that one time that you tried to assassinate someone.
Yeah, and they've thought about it and they've waited till the end and they've swapped out their cards and chosen to keep a Contessa just for that situation.
And it's one of these social deception games where like you're allowed to talk throughout the whole thing, so there's just constant accusations and, oh, it's definitely you, no, that was a lie, I'm 100% sure you're lying. And I love those type of games.
Are you not worried a little bit that it's kind of like Hanabi in the way it's a little bit scripted after a while, after playing it so many times?
I definitely think if you play with the same group every time, it can be a little bit scripted. But I also think it's got that kind of love letter easing your mind. It becomes a very comfort game. You don't know how it's going to go. People get a little bit better at it each time, like keeping Contessa. If they know you're going to assassinate them later on in the game, like people start to get clever, or they know better which bluffs are more realistic, having played it a few times.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I got to get past that tax thing. It's tricky. I don't know how to figure out how to get around it. So my number 4 is Sheriff of Nottingham, which is probably one of the best social games I've ever played in my life. Definitely a game I love playing anytime it comes out. It's about it goes around the table, but each person is a sheriff of Nottingham, and then all the other players have to get goods through the gates. And so as the sheriff, you get to look at anybody's loot that they're coming in with and making sure that they have what they say they have, So someone could say, oh, I've got 5 apples. And then you say, you're looking at the person's wagon and you're saying, if I open it up, then it's going to cost me money. But if they don't have 5 apples, it's going to cost them big. And so you're trying to see if people are bluffing or not, because the best thing is you say you got 5 apples, but you've actually got like 5 crossbows in there. And then you're going to score a whole bunch of points by selling these crossbows in Nottingham without paying any taxes. So I absolutely adore this game, because it's one person is in the hot seat each time, and it goes round and around, and you're learning more and more about bluffs, more and more about like little kind of insights into people, how they play. And yeah, I think it's one of the best bluffing games I've ever played. Yeah,
I think it's one of these games where like if you're I'm trying a nicer way to say you're a dick. If you're, it's one of these games where if you're a dick early on, I went with it. If you're a dick early on, it comes back and bites you in the ass later on, because no one believes you when you're coming in with stuff. You're like, no, I've definitely just got 8 apples, and they're like, no, I'm not believing you. You can either bribe me, or I can open this up and confiscate everything. And you're like, no, it's definitely apples. I'm like, okay, I'm opening it. No, wait, maybe I'll bribe you.
But you can also do that. That's what I love about Sheriff of Nottingham. Sometimes the double bluff and the triple bluff, they don't see the action that much on the table. It's always about bluffing, right? This game, you can go quadruple bluffs. Yeah. You can just keep building up and up and up, because if you do the same intonation, go like, oh yeah, I've got 8 apples. And the person opens it and you do have 8 apples. It's the double bluff. But then the next time it goes around, they're thinking the same thing. Is it time for the triple bluff? It might be. So it's all about, because it's just bluffing. Every single round, every single action is bluffing.
But it also has one advantage, I think, over other games, in that it's often one-on-one bluffing. So sometimes as a group, like I think, for instance, me and Owen often bluff at each other rather than at the group. So we tend to lose out because the group gets distracted by our own fighting and doesn't focus on it. Whereas when it's the 2 people, like you're playing against somebody else or whoever is in the hot seat, you get a little more flexibility in like knowing, like I know Owen's always going to accuse me, so I can take that into consideration on when he's the sheriff or when I'm the sheriff.
The old triple bluff.
Yeah, then you got to get deep into the layers of bluffing. But I know like strangers or people who are new to the game, they're not going to overthink it as much. So you kind of get a little bit more action options or bluff options because you're playing one-on-one rather than as a group of accusing everyone for everything. And that makes it really good.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love Sheriff of Nottingham, because like games like Coup, and we'll probably talk about it later, Werewolf, they have this problem of if you are new to the game or you're like a stranger to the group, you can hide away kind of and then not participate as much as you want to. Sheriff of Nottingham puts it front and center. You have to get involved because it's a one-on-one conversation. Now, they're quick conversations and stuff, and you can get around it pretty quickly. But it's a good way of like getting to know people as well. And so you have these connections. So a stranger can't hide. No one can hide from the Sheriff of Nottingham.
Because it's them.
And soon, it'll switch places. It'll be someone else. Brian, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is a game that I'm still not sure of. I can't tell if I love this game or if I hate this game, and it really depends on how it goes for me. But it's Concept. Now, if anyone has played Concept is a really fun game where you're trying to convey an idea or a word or a noun or whatever it may be by just using like loose descriptions of it. So like you might say you're trying to describe Sonic the Hedgehog. So you might say it's an animal, it's blue, it's fast. And like you're using like opposites. So you've got like fast, slow, light, dark. You've got colors, you've got numbers, that kind of thing. But it's really hard to convey even some of the most simple, like even you're trying to describe an elephant, you might go, it's an animal, it's big, it's grey. And now people are guessing like rhino, they're guessing whale, they're guessing shark, they're guessing, everything under the sun. And you're going, how are you not getting this? And
this is a real example, by the way, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Because we didn't get it. We didn't get
mental.
Sonic the Hedgehog because it wasn't as simple as that.
It was so simple.
You
like,
put down like fast
blue hedgehog.
No, you put down
fast
like
blue animal, and then
no, you put down fast, and then like fictional, and then like animal, and then you put down like ring, and then you put down golden, and then blue, and then we were so confused at that point.
But you can put down different kind of idea colors as well. So like the fast fictional blue animal, and then also there's the golden ring, and stuff like that. And I thought this was the most obvious thing in the world. I thought, how can no one get Sonic from this?
But the other thing is, it's not just animal. So you pick animal, but animal is also animal, plant,
or person, or something like that.
There's it's 3 categories.
Yeah.
So beetles, which do actually come in blue, were also in there, and like
I got stuck on Blue Jay, the Canadian Blue Jays.
Yeah.
I was like, it's the baseball thing. Sonic never came up.
Yeah. Because
blue hedgehogs aren't a thing. Why is Sonic
That's
blue?
why I said fictional. That's why I said fictional, and you stuck with like real world things.
But this is the problem with Concept, because you're looking as the person who's making the guess.
Yeah.
And so you're populating your head with guesses, and then you already have like the problem in your head. Like, so if you looked at it, if you took a step back and you looked at it from above, Sonic would be so clear. But because you're already looking, you're like Teenage Mutant Heroes, Blue Jays, all these other guesses are coming up and they're kind of fogging your head. And
like people, it's great for social because the person who's giving the clues can obviously just give clues by putting little cubes out on this massive board of like concepts, basically. No, I just got where the name came from. But so you can only give clues by putting out these little cubes. You can't say anything, but people are just constantly shouting things at you going, whale, rhino, Sonic. It's like, yes, Sonic. But like you're trying to tell people when they're close or when they're getting the hint, or sometimes you're just piling cubes up on one thing to highlight that it's important. And like people are like, there's 8 blue things. It's like, no, it's just really important that he's blue.
And numbers are a tricky one.
Yeah.
You put 8 cubes on one. Does that mean 8? Does that mean 8 ones? Does that mean this is very important?
1,111 of them, you say.
Yeah, and I think the first few times we played it, we really had difficulty actually getting on board with it. I thought that I think we didn't get the clues for at least the first 4 times or something that we played. It wasn't until after we got familiar with the list that we got into it more. This
is a problem with a lot of these kind of games, is that the list is very dependent on like what country was the game made in, who made it, So it can be sometimes American, it can be sometimes European, sometimes Asian, and so you cannot agree with some of the things. When it looks like an easy clue in concept, it might not be easy if you've never heard of poutine.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think it's a great fun game, and it's one of those ones where, because everyone else can talk, you can be discussing ideas and stuff with each other, even though like you're competing against each other, like you're still discussing ideas going, look, it's definitely the Blue Jays, because it's blue, it's an animal, and like everyone else like, yeah, that makes sense, and the guy putting out the clues like, no, it's still not the Blue Jays. Guess something else.
Kira?
So I went for actually quite a similar game in that it's about concepts. I went for Dixit. So this is not a social deception game. It's more of a social trying to include people game. So you get a load of cards that have very abstract pictures on them. And then you pick a thing that you think describes one of the cards. And you want some, but not all of the people to get it. Everyone else gets to put a card in that they think shows that word or picture or concept or phrase, and you don't want anyone at the table to pick theirs, but you don't want it to be so easy everyone gets it, but you don't want to be so hard that no one gets it. And it's one of the kind of the in-between games. So I think there's a few more on the list of this type of thing where you kind of want somewhat but not everyone on board.
I think the easiness though of the cards, this only comes into play with low player counts. When you have like 6 or 7 people playing Dixit, you want it as easy as possible. You want it to be as easy as possible, because not everyone's going to get it, no matter how easy it's going to be.
Someone doesn't get the clue.
Yeah.
I love, first of all, the artwork. I think the game itself is really, really beautiful. I think that the cards kind of give you ideas and are very interesting and enjoyable to look at. And then trying to figure out a word or phrase or whatever that describes something. I enjoy the small player count. I enjoy it having to try and find that balance of like there only being 4 people and you having to find a word like that divides that group that some people are going to get and some people aren't going to get. It does become a little bit jokey in smaller player counts, because you want to focus on a joke that somebody or something you share with somebody that you don't share with somebody else. And that doesn't happen as much with the bigger player count. So it kind of is what sort of game you want to play as to what works well. But I just really enjoy like trying to figure out how somebody thought this card looked like envy. Whereas I'm like, that does not look at all. It's like getting a window into somebody's brain. And I love chatting about it then afterwards. So I love that discussion about how did you think that this was envy when it was just such an abstract picture. So I love that piece of it. I love that breaking down or that insight. And I find it social just because you get a lot of weird insights into people's minds that you don't get in some of the other games.
Yeah. And it's another one of those games that's really great to talk about, because each round is quite quick, but it's really great to talk about after each round. So I might not do a whole lot of talking while you're, playing out your secret card. But when you're dissecting it afterwards, going, oh, I really thought that was going to be it because I was so sure of that. And, that one fits perfectly. And, oh, who put down that one? That one works really well. I can't believe you had that card in your hand. And I think it works really well in that regard.
Yeah, I have a couple of issues with it.
You suck at it.
Yeah, that is a big issue.
If you're losing, it's hard to come back. There's no real way of coming back.
Catch up back.
No, absolutely, there's not.
So if you're losing, you can kind of feel like there's no real point in playing. After a while,
I think with a big group number that might be different, because if you play out a card that's very similar to the theme, you might get like 6 people guessing your card, which would get you 6 points and really get you back into it.
Yeah,
because we tend to play it with like 3 or 4 people a lot. There really is, once you're out, you're out. It's
I think with the higher player counts, there's less rounds pretty much because there's more points in the game.
Yeah,
and so it gets to the end quicker. Yeah, so I would say it's better for higher player counts. But yeah, like even the random cards you get, sometimes it can be very difficult to come up with any sort of thing that you would like. So even if you're playing with all your friends and you all like Marvel movies and you're trying to come up with like a cool Marvel in joke, it's still hard to come up with anything if the cards aren't right. Because the cards are weird.
The cards are very weird. But that's really abstract art. Yeah,
that's the part of the charm, I think.
Yes, definitely. That's the bit I enjoy is the weird cards.
Yeah. It is a beautiful game, and it's fun to watch everything kind of laid out. Yeah, no, I love it.
What about yours?
My number 3 is Werewolf, which is like a really classic social game.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the first one ever made, but it's really old. It's called Mafia on Wikipedia, and it's about there being someone in the town or in the village is a werewolf, and we got to find that person and kill them, because every night the werewolf wakes up and it kills someone in the village. And so, the way I like to think about it or imagine it is 10 people are in a circle, all sitting in chairs. And then there's this kind of fake thing where night falls. And then there's a person who's kind of like the game master, and they ask the werewolf to open her eyes, point at someone in the village, and then those werewolves eat that person.
Yeah.
And then everyone wakes up and they're like, oh my God, that person died. We thought they were the werewolf.
Yeah.
And it's just really talking and social skills and just immediate dialogue between everybody, and everyone's accusing each other. There's not a whole lot of rules to this game. It's literally just yelling at people and accusing them. Sometimes there's special roles, like there might be the hunter, who is a special villager who has a shotgun and he can just kill anybody he wants. And so people can try and convince the hunter to kill the werewolf, but the werewolves can also convince the hunter to kill villagers. So obviously the werewolves are trying to keep secret who they are. They don't want to get involved in the discussions too much, but sometimes they get dragged in.
Yeah, I think it's really good that you can, because it's another one of these games that's just constant accusing each other of, it's definitely you, no, it's definitely him. No, I heard him move. No, that definitely them over there. They were very suspiciously quiet during this round, and
that's the coolest thing I love.
It's so much fun
when you play it three or four times. And the one person who's always talking about this person's a werewolf, and you play a game and they're just completely silent, and you're like, that person's a werewolf. And in the first round, you know that they're a werewolf because they haven't said a thing.
Yeah, we played one game of it where there was one guy had heard one of the werewolves during the night, and he was like, it's definitely him. I heard him moving. And I jumped in and I was like, no, I'm pretty sure it was you. Like, you're being very accusatory here. I'm 100% sure it's you. And then everyone kind of jumped and piled on. It turned out I was werewolf as well. There was two of us in the game, and you just didn't know it. But it's a great game that you can play with. Like, you can play it with simple rules where, there's a lot of people that are just, villagers, and they don't have any special abilities. But as people get used to the rules and get used to how the werewolves act and stuff like that, you can add in like the couple or the lovers or whatever they're called. So if those two survive with just the werewolves, they win because they're the last two alive. And like you said, the hunter, you've got the little girl who's allowed peek when the werewolves are out killing people. Like, she's the only one allowed look. But if the werewolves see them looking, they're just going to straight away kill her. There's no messing around. So it's a real high risk, high reward, role. But there's so much variety and so different, and
I think it's fantastic. Yeah,
definitely. I like the game. I think the struggle is, how do you get conversation going sometimes, and make it more interesting each time you play. But I definitely think the advantage of Werewolf is that you can play with anyone. The rules aren't complicated. So you can just start a game and, at any dinner party or any event or just a social gathering, and people get along okay. So you really, once you vary the players, it's fine. But yeah, it only struggles if you're playing the same game with the same group. Then it's just all about tells. It's more like poker than it is like a board game.
I think you're right. I've played it with lots of people, from like older people to younger people. Everyone kind of gets the concept of the rules. Having multiple werewolves is in kind of higher player counts, and that's really where the game shines. Where you have one person who's a werewolf trying to protect the other person who everyone's accusing as a werewolf, and trying to just figure out like what it is, but also not show anything on their face. So sometimes they have to go along with the crowd and kill that werewolf, even though they're a werewolf as well. And sometimes you have to use that as an advantage to go like, all right, I need to like confirm in people's heads that I'm a villager. And so there's lots of cool different things you'll learn about it. But once you learn those things, it can kind of get a little bit done. And if you are playing with new people, they can kind of hide away and kind of fall into the background. So I'd say,
it can be a little bit overwhelming if people are like, just jump straight without anything happening, just go straight into the flow of conversation, because that can be a little bit stilted sometimes if as people gain familiarity with.
Yeah, definitely worth checking it out. Anyway, it's one of the oldest games out there, and that's for a reason. That reason that people still keep playing it and keep bringing it out in party games is because it still works. Number two,
I've gone for a game called Apples to Apples. I think this game was a lot bigger over in the States than it ever really was here. This game to me it was the first time I've ever played a game like it, but I think it's kind of like the precursor to the likes of Cards Against Humanity and games like that, where one person plays out, an idea card. So with Apples to Apples, you play out like a description of something. So you might say like tall, or it's always an adjective, tall, relevant, or whatever the word is. I completely forgot exactly what an adjective was there as soon as I started describing it. I hate this goddamn. Yeah. So they play out an adjective, so any kind of descriptor word whatsoever, and then everyone else has a list of nouns in their hand. So it might be a book, it might be a giraffe, it might be I forgot what nouns are. Can
what are tall things? Giraffes. Yeah.
So like everyone will play out a card face down, and turtles, tall turtles. But everyone will play out a card face down, and sometimes your hand will really suit it, and sometimes it won't. And whoever's the round master at the time, whoever played out the descriptive word, has to then pick which the best object is that fits the description. And it's a very simple version of the likes of Cards Against Humanity and stuff like that, where you can play it with school kids, you can play it with families, you can play it with everyone. Like, you can throw in a few house rules there where you get to justify your decision and stuff like that, where you've gone, like, I think we played one game of it and someone threw out the adjective irrelevant, and someone threw out like Sun Tzu's Art of War as the description because they didn't know what Sun Tzu's Art of War was. And then they were trying to justify how that book was irrelevant. And just watching them try was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Oh, you defend your sentence, do you?
Yeah. You don't have to. That's a kind of house rule you can throw on it, but it kind of makes it more fun, especially when, you've got something completely ridiculous that you're just throwing out there. And sometimes you can sway that because like the judge might be like, oh, well, this is definitely a winner. But then someone puts in a really good convincing argument in favor of their card, and it can really sway the judge like, oh yeah, no, that's definitely a better match for that description. And I'm throwing it in there because, like Werewolf, it's a classic. It's one of those originals that was a kind of really unique idea that has been kind of done in many different versions since, but it's still a fun game to play, and it's great for, if you've got a group with, all kinds of ages and stuff like that, or all kinds of levels of ability or even language, because it's not a particularly challenging game. You don't have to understand, complex geopolitical systems or anything like that to be able to play Apples to Apples.
Yeah, I suppose if you know what people like, you can kind of come up with some good combinations. If you have the cards, and if you're good at kind of describing and talking about it, you could convince people of it. Like if you're a good sales pitch,
Yeah.
I think I've played it without the description part. It's still good. It's still you still get a lot of insights. Like you're trying to play to the person who put out the initial card. You're trying to appease them or convince them, and it's a good laugh. I have to say, it's just sitting around having a bit of fun. I enjoy it.
This reminds me a lot of actually Jackbox, the games. The computer games. Played a lot of that during COVID lockdowns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just sounds like a really good board game version of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea of bringing that out and kind of getting people involved in sales pitches and just having fun.
Yeah.
There's no like deception and bluffing. There's actually like, this is just about who's telling the best crack,
Yeah. And sometimes like that, it's not even, about the most appropriate word for the description. It can sometimes just be something really ridiculous, but that the person who's guessing it might, appreciate or know. Yeah. So
awesome. I love that. I've been to America lots of times. I really have to go to someone's house and play Apples to Apples.
I think wasn't it? It was in somebody's house.
In America.
Yeah, in America. I first played it.
Almost everybody in USA owns it. It's a very popular game.
I don't think we own a copy ourselves. No.
No, just well over there.
I don't even think I've seen a copy here, but I've definitely come across it once or twice. But I know it's not as big here. I just think it's quite an old game as well. I think it's nearly 20 years old. If memory serves.
Very kind of family oriented when it first came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Kira, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Skull. Also a beautiful game, which a lot of the things on my list are. In it, you get 4 cards or circles, discs, I guess, and 3 of them have flowers and 1 of them has a skull. And each round, you put 1 card out and everyone else does the exact same. And then you have to guess how many flowers you can turn over without finding a skull. And you have to always flip over your own cards first. And you want to try and get the most points, or 2 points. I think it's just 2 points to win. It's a really good game. It's very simple. It could seem quite repetitive when you're starting off, but actually there's not a lot to it. So it's much easier a lie than it is in things like Werewolf and Sheriff of Nottingham, because it's a very simple lie. And you don't even have to try and, you can kind of guess whether people have skulls or flowers out. But because you have to have flowers out when you're trying to win, so you can't have a skull out, that kind of gives you that option of, if somebody's going for it, they probably have flowers, or they're pretending to go for it, then they might have a skull. It's just easy. There's only a few options. It keeps that simple nature of a social game. And you can some people play like very randomly, like Owen sometimes just shuffles his cards and deals them out and then tries to work reactively at that point. And I just enjoy the fact that sometimes I forget as well what I've done.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if I want to win a betting round or lose a betting round.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a little bit off-putting. The team is very abstract. You think flowers and skulls. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything. It's very much a bluffing game.
I think it's Dia de los Muertos, a type of Mexican style.
Yeah, but
What was the flowers?
Putting down flowers and putting down skulls and guessing which ones. I don't think it has. It's very kind of abstract team, which can put people off, especially when they're trying to learn the rules. But I will say that you just play it once and you'll fully understand the rules straight away. And they are very quick games. People always want to play more. They always think that they can bluff and beat everybody else, and it usually just involves them putting down more skulls, and then they kind of mess themselves up. So there's kind of a learning curve in it, but it's a very fun learning curve of just, how much will you risk putting yourself in a bad position to beat other people. In saying that, I'm very bad at skull. I lose all the time, but I enjoy playing it.
Yeah, I'm not great at it either. A lot of my wins are down to luck, complete luck.
But I think that extra element of luck, requires more luck than other games of bluffing.
Yeah, like I think half the fun as well is, in convincing someone to pick up your cards and flip them over because they think they're flowers, but they're actually a skull.
Yeah.
And they lose then, and you're like, yes, gotcha.
Making people lose, yeah.
And you start to not trust people as well, and other people can use that to your advantage. So, like if we were playing a game and I kept flipping over skull on Kira's, I just would stop adding her cards to the list, and I'd be like, I guess there's just 3 flowers, and hoping I'll just flip over Brian's, and then Brian can obviously take that into account and put a flower there or a skull and screw me over. So yeah, it's a great in-play between everybody.
And it's also quite an interesting ending, because if you're stuck with a skull, you can never win. You have to accept that and then try and convince people until they flip your skull over, and then they're like, you're going to lose. But it's good.
Yeah, cool. My number 2 is Perudo, which has the same problem of abstract concept as Skull, and it's kind of a very similar type of game, which is you have a cup and you've got a whole bunch of dice in it. You shuffle those dice, you put them down underneath the cup, and you look at your own dice. So you might have like a couple of 4s, a couple of 3s, whatever you rolled. And then you have to guess how many rolled 4s and 3s are out there on the board, or whatever number. And so you're guessing based on all these dice rolls. And so, there's a 1 in 6 chance of any side of the number coming up on a dice. So it's easy to come up with the calculations, even if it is a little bit maths. And so then you just kind of guess, and then people start to, I'll say there's 4 4s, and then someone else might say there's 5 4s, and then someone else will be like, hey, I've got loads of 2s here. I'm just going to go 6 2s, because they have to go up in the thing to change the number. And then it gets more and more ridiculous until someone's at I'm on 8 4s. I got to do it. And then they have no idea, and everyone shows their dice, and boom.
It's the game that was in Pirates of the Caribbean, if anyone remembers those movies. They don't seem like that long ago, but they really were. But it's the dice game from Pirates of the Caribbean, essentially. But it's such a fun social game, because, you're sitting around and you've got 4 4s under your cup, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'm going to go for 4s this time. And you there's 16 dice on the table, so you want to start it low so it gets back around to you, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go 6 4s, and then someone will come in after you and they'll go 12 4s, and you're like, this fucking lunatic he's got so many 4s, and it comes back around to you and you're like, yeah, 13 4s, it's clearly loads of 4s, and you flip it over and you're the only one with 4s. And everyone else was bluffing through the whole thing.
Yeah, that happens. Or if you don't have any 4s, you can guess 5 4s, and then everyone thinks you've got loads of 4s, but don't. So there's lots of different scenarios. I think it's like Skull in the fact that it's about bluffing. I think you have more options in Perudo of what to do, but the game does last longer. So Skull is nicer if you want a quicker game that you can kind of repeat and get to learn more. Whereas Perudo, if it's not going well for you and you get eliminated, you got to go off and do something else because it's going to be 20 minutes before this game is over.
Yeah, I think that maths as well is off-putting for a lot of people. So I think new people to board games, if you're saying, okay, but I guess people, maybe not new people to board games, people who don't play poker either or any of those sorts of games. If you're saying, okay, you're going to have to calculate the statistical likelihood of fives being on the table and stuff like that. And even though necessarily you don't need good skills because you don't need to calculate it accurately. You just need to know like there's a maximum 15 dice. So don't say there's 15 fives. That's probably not. But when you get to like 4 dice, you could say 4 fives because sometimes for some reason on 4 dice across the whole table, everyone gets fives. It's kind of that sort of, there's more layers to it. There's a lot more options because you can go up and down. But that definitely, I think Skull doesn't have that entry level requirement, that barricade to entry, that you're like, oh, but do I know enough? Am I going to be able to calculate enough on the fly? And even though the calculations are really simple, and a lot of it is like gut calculations and not like real calculations, because ones are wild cards, so they kind of add a bit to it. Skull is easier to just go, who knows? I'm going to put them down and I'm not going to worry about it. Whereas Perudo, you've got that random element. You've got that. Not everyone started with the same cards. Not everyone starts with the same dice faces.
Yeah, so I think we all kind of agree here then that you got to buy Skull first, then you buy Perudo, and then you go to Las Vegas and win loads of money in Texas Hold'em. You're a master at bluffing. Cool. That is the number 2s and the top 1s for our top 15 social games. First is Brian.
Numero uno. I'm going to kind of go for a combo one here. That's kind of a advance on apples to apples. So I'm going to put in, Cards Against Humanity or the Irish version of it, Here Now, or the Cyanide and Happiness, Joking Hazard. They're all kind of the same version of, or like different versions of the same game where, someone plays out a card and then everyone has to play out a funny response to it and the dealer picks it out. These are my number 1 because they're just an absolute classic. You don't have to understand board games or tabletop games at all. You don't have to play for long. You don't have to try and figure out any complicated rules. It's literally just someone plays a card, you play down something that's funny after it. And sometimes these are just so hilariously ridiculous. And sometimes, they're clearly just people getting rid of cards, but sometimes they're just so funny that, you've just got a whole room in stitches all laughing at this like horrific ridiculousness of the cards that are out in front of you. And I love that about it, that it's such a simple game that has such a big effect and you can play it with so many people. And in some cases, the more the merrier, but it is just amazing that it
I think I
does so much.
I love those games because the randomness of the cards means that sometimes you're forced to make jokes that you might not want to make.
Yeah.
They're really funny, but it's just because of the cards that the game gave you. You have to make that joke because it's the only viable option. And then people think that's your humor, even though it's not. It's the game's humor. I'm just a medium.
You just gone really dark with it really quickly.
Yeah.
There's some great, Cards Against Humanity combos out there online. You can go look them up, but oh my God, some of them are so dark and some of them are just, so cleverly funny and stuff like that. But its ability to have anyone play for as long or as little and, even just play to their own sense of humor kind of thing is just such fun for that game.
And even if you don't think that like your group has like a lot of comedians or you think someone might not want to play because they're not very funny, you'd be surprised because they still know how to make a joke. They still know the proper format. And so they'll know what will make a funny joke with the cards they have.
Set up punchline. Yeah. The cards do all the work for you.
Yeah. And it's a great skill to have. So like it's about that kind of ruining expectations is pretty much what comedy is. And so this game is great at that, especially so if you come into the game and you're like, I don't have a great comedy. I'm not known for being a very good comedian. You can destroy that game because no one will be expecting it.
Yeah. I think its accessibility is just, it's so much. And you never have someone walking away from a game of Cards Against Humanity going, that was kind of boring. Like, I think
it has serious moments.
It does, yeah.
Serious moments. You obviously, you will run out after a while, so you can't play it forever.
Yeah. But there's expansion packs and different country variants and stuff like that.
But you've already mentioned 3 games, so there's lots of different choices. Yeah.
And I think it does. It definitely promotes conversation. If nothing else, everyone just wants to talk about the jokes and the what and how could you put them together, and then everyone laughs anyway, even though they're appalled. But yeah,
Kira, number one.
Well, I've gone for quite the unusual one for my number one because I don't know if this counts, but as we're making the top 10 or top 5, I don't care. I've gone for murder mystery parties, dinner parties. So you can buy these online. It's almost like role playing. Well, it's very like role playing.
Really, if you think about it, it is just role playing.
It's just role playing. Okay, fine. It's entirely role playing. So you get like a little bundle, I guess, online. You invite people to a dinner party, a real dinner party in real life, where you serve food or order takeaway. And then you print out some media that they gave you and email stuff to people. And people read a character background before the party. They read something about the murder, and then they know stuff about the murder as they go into the party. And then everyone has dinner and chats and tries to figure out who the murderer is. And you want to be the person to figure it out, and you don't want everyone else to figure it out. So you have information, but you have to share that information to get more information. So you have kind of like your resource pile is the paragraph you were given before the party. It's about trading it. I think it can go really well and it can go really badly. Your dinner party needs to be spread out over like maybe drinks standing up in a room, and then like dinner sitting down, and then like moving around. So you have to plan it more than you would obviously a board game because it's a whole more in-depth. But I think it really makes for an interesting game. You also have to everyone has to be involved. That's the only thing. It's very hard to have people not involved, but really good packs of like dinner party murder mystery dinner party scenarios have for people who aren't that interested, here are some characters who are less involved in the murder. So you can give those to people. Some places give you a rating. So they have like a 5-star rating. And then if it's a 2-star person, that just means that person doesn't really have to do much. So if they weren't really into the game, give the 2-star characters, I guess, to the people who aren't that interested. And then 4-star characters are like people who are actually heavily involved in the murder and were key features. And yeah, it's really good. It does require a lot more work than maybe a board game. But I think social-wise, it's good for like having new people involved with like a group that knows each other quite well, because it makes for a better dinner party as well. A lot of talking to people, a lot of getting up and walking around, a lot of reasons to talk to people as well. So like you want to get information out of somebody, but let's say you've had your conversation, you've gotten the information you want. It's okay to leave talking to that person and go talk to somebody else. And it's not like, rude. So there's a lot of movement for meeting people.
Love that. In actual real life, you were like talking to the butler. Oh, you give me your life story. Okay, well, I'm never going to talk to you again. Get the hell out of here. Interesting. So it's like Don't Get Got is something you do as part of other things. This seems like it's just the dinner party.
Yeah.
And you're going there for this, and that's the whole thing. That's a cool idea. It's a lot more encompassing than probably other things that you've seen on this list. Definitely.
It's really fun. Like as you said, you have to be completely involved with it. It's not as casual as some of the other games we've talked about, but when you're going in and you're like because no one's pack has all the information to figure out who the killer is or anything like that. But you're like, oh, I think I've got a fair clue, from my stuff. So I'm going to go question that person. And they send you off in a completely different direction because their packet tells you nothing of use. And you're like, oh, so maybe it was that guy. And then you're wandering off to, talk to other people. And it almost forces you to mingle with everyone. And even though you're all pretending to be different characters, it means that, when you reveal who the murderer was, now you're all back to yourselves and you're talking because you've already broken all the ice. And as you said, if you've got new people into a new group or stuff like that, it's brilliant because, the ice is already broken by force. And now you can relax and chat to the people normally. And I think, I didn't even think of it for this list, but it's a brilliant idea.
That's a cool idea. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. As far as getting them goes, you usually just download them off the internet. You buy them off various different sales things. And a lot of the places that you can buy them have helpful hints and kits and details of what you need, like name tags and things like that. But yeah, it was a weird one. But as far as social games go, that's probably one of my favorite
Yeah.
Very heavily social game.
A lot of social skills involved in that one. I like it. I like it a lot.
So that's my number one. Owen, what is your number one?
I am going to go with Secret Hitler, which is, I would consider, the king of games where you have a set of hidden traitors fighting against a bunch of other people. I think the reason it's so good is that every single turn feels influential. So no matter what part of the game you're at, whether it's near the end where you're either like the traitors trying to finish off people, or you are the Democrats trying to bring back democracy, you'll always have a chance. You'll always have a chance. And if there's powers that kind of evolve, so as the kind of the Nazis get more power, they will actually get more actions that they can do. And so they can assassinate people and they can do all sorts of things like that. And it's a really satisfying game to play. And it allows people to, it's not just like Werewolf where it's just about being deceptive and convincing other people to do stuff. There's a lot more thinking about it. There's a lot more like, well, if I wait a turn, I can do this with this power. If I can convince these two people to vote me in as chancellor, I can get this power. And so it's a little bit more sneaky, a little bit more like alliances, but also obviously you have to be secret about who you are. But so like, people can screw themselves over as well. There's lots of mechanics in there where you can make other people look like the Nazis and you can force other people to put down the fascist regime tokens. And it's a pretty long game, but very satisfying.
Really so much fun. It's like it's Resistance and it's coup and it's all of them, but it's more. It's so much fun. Just when you're a fascist and you're trying to be really sneaky about it, but you can't be too obvious from the start, and you want to get people to trust you, and it's really a fantastic number one choice.
Yeah, I think it's because Secret Hitler came out after all those games.
Yeah,
they knew that everyone loves those games, but they might be a little bit balanced issues or player counts, and so they made sure that they learned from all those things. And it is just like I would still recommend like Skull. I would recommend playing Coup and other ones, Resistance, before this, because it can be a little bit intimidating. But even if you haven't played any of those games before, you're gonna have fun. You're gonna love it. But it is like a mash.
Yeah, they really worked on like the voting system and the election system. I mean, what's that Jackbox game where there's an alien on board a spaceship?
Among Us. There's a game that's not Jackbox called Among Us.
Not Among Us, but it's...
Yeah, but the Jackbox game is a rip-off of Among Us.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
It is, very much so.
I suppose, you're all go in and do tasks and then you're a trader. Yeah, that sort of thing, though. I think they brought a lot of that sort of elements of like, the problem with Resistance is if you don't talk, it doesn't go anywhere. And they've kind of... You have to convince people to vote for you. So you can't just not talk because you're not going to win. So they've made like a compelling argument to get involved and to do something. Not necessarily the right thing, or like not even the right thing, but like a good strategic choice. Sometimes you can just be like, I've gotten too far into this lie, I'm going for it anyway. But yeah, I think that it brings people out more than the previous incarnations of these sorts of games.
Yeah, because you have this idea of one person getting two of the policies, and they give those two policies to the president, I think, and the president then enacts one of them. And so if you are the person who has to pick the two policies and you're a fascist, you would pick two fascist policies, give them to the president, and he has to pick a fascist policy.
Yeah.
And of course, that forces everybody involved to begin a conversation. That conversation starts immediately, and it's about like, what happened? Who is the fascist here?
Because everyone thinks it's the president who put it in. He's like, no, I got two fascist ones. And then the chancellor's like, no, I gave you one of each. Or, I got three fascist policies. I had no choice but to pass you two. And, no one knows who to trust, and you're trying to see who's lying.
I've had it before as well, because like it's very precise. Like I once before, the person who's picking the policies was a fascist. The president was a fascist. Okay, but it was the first turn of the game, and so they knew they couldn't enact the fascist policy. Otherwise, everyone would know it's them straight away. So they ended up enacting the democratic one, and it's like, this is perfect.
Just to hide in plain sight.
Yeah. So it's about chaos as well, trying to add in chaos and stuff like that. Perfect, yeah.
It is probably the ultimate social deception game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's right up there. I think they, as you said, it came out after, and they really did their research on what makes the previous social deception games so good and where could they be stronger.
Yeah, Yeah, so I think everyone should buy all 15 of those games.
Yes, woo, go for it.
That wraps it up for our top 15 social games. Follow us on social media to help us out. We've been Decking Awesome Games. Thanks for listening. See ya.
See ya.
Bye.